I still remember the first time I stepped onto the grounds of Rockwood Mansion. It was the summer of 1999, and my family had planned a week-long vacation in Wilmington, Delaware. The mansion was a beautifully preserved English-style estate, perched atop a gentle hill overlooking the Brandywine River. I had read a little about the place before we came: the grand architecture, the manicured gardens, the history. But what really caught my eye were the stories of the supernatural that clung to the mansion like ivy on the stone walls. My parents were keen on history, so one afternoon we took the guided tour. The sun was dipping low in the sky, casting long shadows through the towering trees lining the mansion's driveway. The air was heavy with a mixture of fading summer warmth and the faint, almost bittersweet scent of wet leaves and earth, the kind of smell that seems to hold centuries of forgotten footsteps and whispered secrets. The distant chirp of cicadas blended with the soft rustling of the tall oaks, creating an eerie symphony that wrapped around the estate like a shroud. The mansion itself was stunning, a sprawling brick manor with white pillars and large windows that reflected the fading light like dark pools. Inside, the polished wooden floors creaked underfoot, each step sending out sharp, hollow echoes that bounced off the high ceilings and ornate wallpaper. The heavy velvet curtains hung motionless, though I could swear they sometimes stirred with a breath of cold air that wasn't there. The scent inside was unmistakable, a mix of aged wood, old paper from the yellowed books lining the shelves, and something faintly metallic, like the lingering presence of memories too heavy to lift. Our guide, a quiet woman named Margaret, told us about the family who built the estate in the mid-1800s and how it was now a museum. She also mentioned the strange happenings reported by visitors and staff over the years: sudden cold spots in certain rooms, ghostly laughter echoing down empty hallways, and the shadowy figure of a man who appeared by the grand staircase. As we moved through the house, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was as if unseen eyes were following me, not with malice, but with a heavy curiosity. When we passed the library, a room lined floor to ceiling with ancient leather-bound tomes, a sudden chill brushed the back of my neck. I turned quickly, but there was nothing, just the faint creak of a floorboard somewhere deep inside the walls. The nursery was the most unsettling. It was a small room painted in faded pastel blues, the walls decorated with hand-painted clouds and stars. Rows of antique toys, wooden soldiers, rag dolls with cracked porcelain faces, a small rocking horse with chipped paint, sat frozen in time. The silence in that room was thick, almost suffocating. I swear I heard the faint, almost imperceptible sound of tiny footsteps scuffling across the floor. But when I glanced down, the floor was empty, save for a scattering of dust motes dancing in the last rays of sunlight. Later, my family and I decided to explore the mansion on our own after the group dispersed. The sun had slipped below the horizon, and the house had transformed. Shadows pooled like ink in the corners of the rooms, and the gas lamps flickered to life, casting a warm but uneasy glow. The walls seemed to pulse with history, whispering in voices just below the edge of hearing. I found myself drawn back to the nursery. The moment I stepped inside, the temperature dropped sharply, like walking into a deep well of cold. My breath came out in small, visible clouds. The heavy silence was shattered by faint giggles, soft, childlike, innocent. They seemed to swirl around me, sometimes close enough to feel their warmth, then fading into distant echoes. It was a sound that should have comforted me, but instead set my skin crawling. The rocking horse creaked slowly, swaying back and forth as if pushed by unseen hands. I stood rooted, heart pounding in my chest, every nerve alive and screaming. I could taste the metallic tang of adrenaline in my mouth and feel a cold sweat bead on my forehead despite the chill. My eyes darted around the room, catching a flicker of movement in the corner of my vision. Then, nothing. I left the nursery trembling and made my way toward the grand staircase. Halfway there, the air changed again. It became heavy, thick, almost suffocating. That's when I saw him. A man stood at the base of the stairs, tall and imposing, yet somehow faded, like a half-remembered dream. He wore a dark tailcoat with silver buttons, a crisp white cravat, and his hair was slicked back neatly. His pale face was framed by the soft glow of the flickering lamps, and his eyes met mine. Deep, dark, unreadable. There was no anger in his gaze, just an overwhelming stillness, as if he was waiting for something, or someone. For a heartbeat, I was frozen. Then the cold pressed against me harder, and the faint scent of pipe tobacco filled the air, mingled with the faintest hint of old leather and wood smoke. I could hear the faintest rustle of fabric, as if the man had just shifted his weight. I blinked. He was gone. The air remained cold where he had stood, and a faint whisper drifted through the hall, almost like a sigh or a soft word I couldn't quite catch. I didn't stop to question it. I hurried back to my family, heart hammering so loudly I was sure they could hear it. That night, lying awake in our rented cottage nearby, I kept picturing the man's face, the chill, the laughter of invisible children echoing in the dark. On our last day, as we walked through the gardens, the sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the soft grass. But even here, the sounds of children's laughter seemed to hover in the breeze, playful and ephemeral. It was as if Rockwood Mansion was alive, a place where past and present collided, where the memories of those long gone were never truly silent. Decades later, I still carry those sounds with me, the cold, the whispered laughter, the sight of the ghostly man waiting quietly at the foot of the stairs. I swear I'll never forget. I worked at the Lewis Maritime Museum at the Cannonball House for 3 years. For most of that time, I thought the ghost stories were just a marketing gimmick, something the Historical Society leaned into because of the building's age and eerie charm. After all, it had taken a British cannonball during the War of 1812. The structure was old, creaky, and filled with maritime relics and oil paintings that watched you with those flat, glassy eyes. But still, I never bought into any of it. Not until that one evening. It was early October, tourist season was winding down, and the museum had closed at 5 like usual. It was a slow day, with only a handful of guests. By the time I locked the front door and flipped the sign, the sun had dipped low behind the rooftops, casting orange-pink light through the bay windows and draping the place in that strange, antique hue that always reminded me of fading ship logs. I started my closing routine, turning off the exhibit lights, locking up display cases, and doing one last walk through. The building is small, but it's laid out in such a way that you can't see everything at once. There's the main hallway, the parlor with maritime weapons and model ships, the old kitchen in the rear, and the second floor rooms filled with naval artifacts and oil paintings. of long-dead ship captains. I had just turned off the lights in the upstairs war exhibit when I heard it, the soft creak of a floorboard downstairs. At first, I figured I was just hearing the building settling. Old houses breathe like living things sometimes. But then it came again, creak, more deliberate this time, followed by the unmistakable sound of a footstep, then another. I froze. No one else should have been in the building. I crept to the top of the stairs and looked down. The parlor was empty, the front door still locked. I was just about to convince myself I'd imagined it when I saw movement. A figure, just at the edge of my vision, turned into the hallway that leads toward the rear kitchen. It was a man, tall, dressed in dark clothes, maybe a long coat. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I caught the glint of silver, buttons maybe. He moved slowly but deliberately, as though deep in thought. "Sir," I called, instantly regretting how thin my voice sounded. No reply. I grabbed the heavy flashlight we kept near the stairwell and descended. The floor creaked beneath me, but the hallway ahead was still. "Sir, the museum is closed. I need you to come to the front." No answer. I quickened my pace and turned into the hallway where he had gone. The floorboards groaned underfoot. The air was noticeably colder back here, and I felt a sudden pressure in my chest. The rear hallway leads into the kitchen, a low-ceilinged room with a fireplace, period cookware, and a window that overlooks the garden. I heard another creak just ahead and caught a glimpse of the man again as he turned the corner into the kitchen. "Excuse me," I called, louder now, almost angry. I rounded the corner after him, and the kitchen was empty. Totally, eerily empty. No man, no sound, no open door or window, nothing but cold air and shadows stretching across the old wooden floor. I stood there, frozen, my skin crawling. I swept the room with the flashlight beam, under the table, behind the hearth, even opened the broom closet. No one. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The door leading to the backyard garden was bolted shut from the inside. There was no way he could have exited without unlocking it first, and I would have heard that. A chill crept up my spine. Not just a "I'm creeped out" kind of cold, but a wet, unnatural cold. The kind you feel in your bones after stepping through fog. I backed out of the kitchen slowly, keeping the flashlight trained on the doorway. Then something caught my eye in the corner of the room. Hanging above the fireplace was an old painting I'd seen 1,000 times. A somber-looking sea captain, bearded, wearing a dark coat with silver buttons. His name was Captain Elias Maddox, and he died at sea in 1843, or so the plaque below said. But now, in the dimming light, I saw something I'd never noticed before. The man in the painting looked exactly like the one I had just seen. Same height, same coat, same glinting silver buttons, same heavy eyes. I backed away faster, practically stumbling into the hallway. The flashlight flickered just once, and in that brief second of darkness, I swear I heard it. A voice, low and far off, not threatening, just tired. Still searching. The light snapped back on, and the kitchen was empty again, dead silent. I locked up in record time, my hands trembling as I fumbled with the keys. I didn't even bother checking the second floor. I just left, walked straight out, and didn't look back. I didn't quit right away, but I never closed the museum alone again. I made sure someone was always there with me, just in case. And whenever I walk past that kitchen door or see Captain Maddox's portrait, I feel the hairs on the back of my neck rise. I was just 10 years old the first time I saw a ghost. Not a flicker in the corner of the eye, not a cold spot, not a whispered voice. A full-bodied, clear-eyed, speaking apparition. It was the spring of 2001, and my fifth-grade class had taken a field trip to Fort Delaware, a hulking stone fortress on Pea Patch Island. The place was cold even in May, surrounded by the gray waters of the Delaware River. We had to take a ferry from Delaware City, and I remember how the building looked as we approached. Weathered stone rising out of the water like something pulled from a dark dream. My teacher called it a Civil War-era prison, but it looked more like a castle someone forgot to finish. I'd always liked history, especially the Civil War. My dad used to read to me from old military encyclopedias, so I was probably more tuned in than most of my classmates. They ran around like it was just another excuse to escape the classroom. But I was looking at the walls, the iron-barred windows, the gun ports, and imagining the men who lived and died there. Over 2,000 Confederate prisoners never made it out. Typhoid, dysentery, starvation. Some said the island itself was cursed. That's probably why I wandered. Our tour group was in one of the upper barracks, and the guide was talking about rations or something. I can't remember now. But I noticed an old doorway with no rope or sign in front of it, just open, like it had always been waiting for someone to walk through. So I did. The room was dim and damp. It smelled like old firewood, iron, and something deeper, mold or rot maybe. The walls were chipped and pale with black streaks from smoke. A single window let in a sliver of gray light that seemed to make the shadows even darker. I stood there for a while, soaking it in, imagining what it must have been like to be locked in that room with nothing but lice, disease, and the sound of men dying all around you. That's when I heard the voice. Thought you'd gone quiet, Jeb. Figured you'd deserted. I spun around. There was a man sitting on an old wooden stool in the corner, just out of the reach of the light. He was wearing a gray but faded Confederate uniform, jacket buttoned high, boots cracked and scuffed, a wide-brimmed slouch hat pulled low over his face. His voice was calm, like molasses, like he'd known me all his life. I'm not, I stammered. He chuckled and looked up at me. I'll never forget his face. Gaunt, with sunken cheeks and dark rings under his eyes. His skin had a pale, almost blue tint, like someone who'd spent too long in the cold. But his eyes, they were alive, sharp, kind even, not at all how you'd picture a ghost. He squinted, tilted his head. What's wrong with you, boy? You look like you've seen a haint. I remember backing up against the wall. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs wouldn't move. He stood slowly, as if his bones ached. You ain't looking too good, Jeb. What did they feed you last night? Rotten hardtack again? My name's Daniel, not Jeb, but he said it with such certainty, like he saw something I didn't, like he truly believed I was someone else. I was frozen. I couldn't even blink. I keep telling him, he said, shaking his head. This war ain't never gonna end. Not here. Not on this damn island. They forgot about us, you know. We're all just waiting. Some of the boys, they ain't right no more. Heard Corporal Stein scratching his face off last night. Thought it was ants under his skin. He walked toward me, slow and measured. I still couldn't move. It wasn't fear. Well, not just fear. It was like something bigger than me was holding me in place, like time itself had shifted around me. When he got close, he bent slightly to look into my face. His breath smelled faintly of mildew and something sour, but not foul, just old. "You're lucky, Jeb," he said softly. "You still got your wits. You still see the light when you close your eyes. Don't let this place take that from you." And then, just like that, he turned and walked through the opposite wall. Not through a door, not through a crack, through the wall. The moment he disappeared, my knees buckled and I hit the floor. The spell was broken. My lungs kicked back in, and I gasped for air like I'd been drowning. I don't remember how I got back to the group. I must have wandered through another corridor, maybe down a flight of stairs. My teacher was furious, of course. She scolded me for lagging behind, made me sit on the ferry next to her so I wouldn't pull another disappearing act. I didn't say a word. What could I say? I never told anyone until years later, and even then, I kept the details vague. I didn't want people thinking I'd made it up. I've since gone back, twice actually. As an adult, I mean. It's still cold, still feels wrong somehow, like the walls themselves are remembering things they'd rather forget. I looked for that room. I never found it again. But every now and then, I think about that man, the way he spoke to me like a brother in arms, like he saw me not as a child, but as someone from his own time, his own war. And I wonder if maybe, just maybe, what we see as ghosts are really just echoes, fractures in time. A man who died in agony, who went mad with hunger and sickness, seeing a familiar face in the haze of his suffering. Or maybe, God help me, he was sane. Maybe he knew what he was seeing. Maybe he's still there, waiting in that cold stone room,